We'll be starting up in a couple of minutes. We're just trying to set up the equipment for the webcast. Just so you guys know, this is going to be webcasted. And if you know of anyone who couldn't make it today and wanted to see the presentation or the workshop itself for reference, it will be available online after the workshop is completed. Oh, there's the man. Okay, so I guess we're ready for the webcast. Welcome. My name is Eugene Kang. I work in the Annual Emissions Reporting Group. I just want to welcome everyone to our first workshop for Annual Emissions Reporting, or AER, for 2020. We have a couple of people here in the audience that's part of our team, as well as some other folks here from rule development teams that affected some of the changes or the new things that are coming up for this season. So they'll be available for questioning or any type of help or any type of insight on different topics after we work through the presentation. Before we get started, I just want to give a couple of housekeeping announcements. Restrooms are located at the hallway or at the end of the hallway as you exit the auditorium. If an evacuation is called, you can please exit the building through the doors in the back of the auditorium. If a shelter in place is necessary, such as an earthquake, please drop and cover your heads and then evacuate when it's safe to do so. And lastly, if you have a cell phone, which most of you probably do, can you please remember to put it on silent or vibrate so we won't have any disruptions during the workshop. Okay, so without further ado, I'll get started with the presentation. Just want to let everyone know the goal will be to best familiarize most people with the program itself and the requirements. We will also have a session where we'll have someone on our team go through a live demonstration of the web tool. And then after, we will open up the floor for a Q&A session. But we'll try to reserve most of the time for any of you who want to come down here to work with our team on the computers, navigate through the web tool itself, possibly even fill out a portion of your report. And so again, we'll try to save as much time as possible so we can allow that maybe roughly 2 hours. We'll be running until about 12:30 today. Okay, so the agenda for this presentation, I'll be going over a program overview, also provide you with what's new this year, in addition to just some basics of the reporting process. Just go over a couple of frequently asked questions. As I said before, we'll go over a live demonstration of the AER reporting tool, Q&A, and then again, hands-on training. Okay, so our annual emissions reporting program is implemented pursuant to our South Coast AQMD Rule 301, specifically Subdivision E. Under this program, applicable facilities are required to report annual emissions from both permitted and unpermitted equipment and processes, and then pay any associated emissions fees for those emissions that exceed specific thresholds that are specified in the rule for criteria air pollutants, ozone depleting compounds, and now 66 tags. A facility is required to submit a report if any of the following occur. If their facility emitted over or 4 or more tons of most criteria pollutants, your VOCs, your specific organics, NOx, SOx, or PM, or over or equal to 100 tons per year of carbon monoxide. Also, you could be subject to reporting if your facility is identified or subject to AB 2588, which is the state's hotspots program, or CARB's criteria and toxic reporting regulation. And I can go into that a little bit further in the next couple of slides. And lastly, if you are notified otherwise by the district, you will be required to submit a report. Okay, so some of the facilities that are subject to AB 2588 have some additional requirements compared to those that are just solely AER facilities. Again, facilities under AER have to report your criteria pollutants, your ozone depleting compounds, and also now the 66 toxics that carry reporting thresholds and fees. This report is required to be submitted annually, and again, fees are paid based on those toxics and criteria pollutants, ODCs, that go over thresholds. For AB 2588 facilities, all of these hold true, but an additional, or a couple of things that are different are every 4 years, they are subject to a longer list of toxics that need to be reported. So, that's kind of the main distinction between the two types of facility types. For CTR facilities, for those of you who aren't familiar with CTR, it's one of the criteria and toxic emission reporting rules that was adopted recently by CARB, and it's also a part of AB 617 efforts. And so facilities under this reg are required to report if they have potential to emit for any non-attainment criteria pollutant of greater than or equal to 250 tons per year, or if the facility is subject to the mandatory reporting regulation or state greenhouse gas reporting regulation, or if they're categorized as a high priority facility under AB 2588. In the tool, you will be able to determine whether or not you are identified as either a CTR facility or AB 2588 facility. The top red box shows if you are AB 2588 and also which phase you're in for quadrennial reporting. The second box shows whether or not you're a CTR facility or AB 617 facility, and also the reason why you were identified, which criteria was selected for you to be identified as a CTR facility. This program does carry a couple of fee exemptions, mainly for small dry cleaners and small businesses. This fee exemption is applied in the reporting tool if you qualify as one of the either small dry cleaner or small business, and your calculated emission totals for the specified toxics here on this slide are below 2 tons per year. Facilities will also need to select the file for exemption checkbox in order for our staff to apply the fee exemption. Okay, so what are the emissions data used for? It's used for a variety of activities and programs, which include building our own emission inventory for the basin. This inventory is used when developing control strategies for our air quality management plan and rules to meet specific basin and statewide goals for air quality. It's also used for compliance verification of multiple South Coast AQMD rules and permit conditions, the federal Title V program, and also our district's reclaim program for NOx and SOx emissions. It also helps us project revenue needed to support other air quality programs that are implemented by the district. And lastly, this emissions data is sent to CARB for them to implement into their own statewide emissions inventory. So what's the due date? When's the due date for this year's report? Well, Rule 301 requires or states that emission reports are due no later than the 75th day of the year. That day falls on a Sunday this year, and so it's been moved to March 17th, which is the first Tuesday or first working day of South Coast. We typically run Tuesday through Friday, for those of you who do not know that. So this year it will be March 17th, 2020, and something different this year compared to previous years is that the submittal of the report is completely electronic. No hard copy submittals will be required. And also online payments have been made streamlined into one step. I'll go over both of these a little bit in the next couple of slides. If you still need to pay by check, that option is still available. To do so, you will need to print the AER payment voucher, which is accessible through the AER web tool when you submit your report. This voucher, along with the check, must be mailed to the addresses listed here on this slide for either regular or overnight delivery. And the voucher and check must be postmarked no later than March 17, 2020 in order to be recognized for it being on time. We also still provide the option to drop off the the payment and voucher. And so the address here is listed, which is probably what you want to use for your envelope that you're going to be using to enclose both your check and your AER payment voucher. Okay, so this is kind of like the exciting stuff for this reporting year, all the stuff that's new compared to last year. And there's quite a bit versus other years if you're familiar with this program. Here's a list of the new things this year. Some of them I'll kind of just brush through, but I have some other slides after this that will go into a little bit more detail. For those of you who are an AB 2588 facility, the quadrennial reporting year or phase is 1A this year. So those of you who are recognized as 1A will be required to report the longer list of toxics. Electronic certification and AER report submittals. We went over that, but I'll go a little over it in the next couple of slides along with the streamlined online fee payment. Electronic report amendment feature. Previous years required printing out the report and kind of doing these manual strikeouts and then submitting that. This is all now electronic, and again, it's only available for this year going forward, but that's kind of one of the exciting features that we're going to be deploying. It's available now, and during the live demonstration, Mani will be going over just a little bit or a couple of details, some of the screenshots of what it might look like. Expand list of reportable toxic with fee thresholds. In previous years, our list was 24. It's been expanded to 66, and I can kind of go over the details of what those expanded or additional toxics are. New emission fee rates are similar to what we've done in the past, but we do have a new category for toxic fees, so I'll go over that in the next couple of slides. And then the topic of source test results that are used for AER emission factors. There have been some changes to that. We provide a little bit more flexibility in our rules, so I'll just go over that in the next couple of slides as well. For any of these new features or new features, if you want to get some more details on it, you can always go on our AER webpage. There is a link there for what's new, and it does go into a little bit more further kind of what the details are regarding each of the new topics. Okay, so going into the electronic certification AER report submittals, elaborating on what I meant by no hard copy submittals. Previous years required printing out the report after you submit it electronically, namely the report, the summary page, maybe a status update page, and a signature page. All of that now is recognized as being submitted or received when you electronically file your report. And the signature page has been replaced with a certify and submit process. And so, again, all of that is electronic, completely electronic. You will not be required to submit any hard copies. So I just want to emphasize that. Don't want anyone to be sending anything in hard copy-wise. So details on the streamlined online payment or the fee payment. Again, previous years required multiple steps. You would have to contact our billing services department by email, provide a copy of our fee summary. At that point, you would have to wait until they generate an invoice for you to reference when you actually go into the online payment system. So that was a multi-step process, but now the web tool is able to do it all in one step. Immediately after you submit your report, you will be able to go into an option or pay option method where it will take you straight into the online payment system. The invoice will be generated, so there will be no wait time, no back and forth. This is all integrated into the web tool now. This is a screenshot of what the reporter will see. Once the report has been submitted, you'll see down here at the bottom in the green box that there is a payment option for paying online as option 1. Once you select your payment method, which is either e-check or credit card, just want to note that e-check does not carry any type of charge if you go that route, but if you choose to go with a credit card route, there would be a convenience fee or convenience fee charged. I believe it's 2.4%, something thereabouts. So just want to identify for you that there is a difference between the two methods that you select. And after you select your payment method, you have to provide your payment information, after which you will be required to agree to terms of payment. And after submission, you will receive a confirmation of your report submittal. On the expanded list of reportable toxics with fee thresholds, these additional toxics were added to Table 4 of Rule 301, which was amended this past June. Diesel PM has been added to the list as a toxic that now carries a fee threshold. And the other 40 or so additional toxics aren't really entirely new toxics. They're just speciates for more accurate reporting of your chlorinated dioxins, your chlorinated dibenzofurans, your PAHs and POMs. As I mentioned earlier, there are new emission fee rates. It's very typical every year or year to year that we increase across the board a CPI-based fee for all our pollutants that have fee thresholds. However, this year we do have new categories for toxic fees as a result of the June amendments to Rule 301. It's important to note that these toxic fees aren't applicable unless the facility either exceeds the pollutant or the criteria pollutant thresholds I mentioned earlier, or if your facility is identified as a CTR facility, or if your facility is identified as an AB 2588 facility. Use of source test results. So previously, well, before this reporting year, in order for you to use the results of a source test as an emission factor, that source test would have to have gone through review and approval by the district before using it in your AER report. There are other things that are also required for it to qualify, such as the source test must have been conducted during the year of the subject report year or before, and the source test must have reflected the equipment that is currently in operation, or I'm sorry, in operation for the subject report year. Those things all hold valid or still valid. However, the flexibility has been added where now if you have submitted your source test for review and approval prior to the AER submittal due date, those results will be able to be used in your AER until you're otherwise notified that they have been disapproved. And if they have been disapproved, you would be responsible for any fees for any underreported emissions amount. However, you will not be assessed a surcharge. So that's kind of an important thing. It's, again, you're able to use it until otherwise notified. We do have a new tracking system on the source testing side that is going to be implemented. I'm not sure if it's this year, but they're working on it now. But you will be able to provide some type of proof that you've submitted to the AQMD for review and approval, and you just have to make sure that you keep that as supporting documentation in the event that you get audited. Okay, so that's kind of a wrap-up of all the new things for this year. We'll go into a little bit more regarding the reporting process itself. Instructions on the reporting process can be found on our AER webpage, but generally the reporting process entails first completing all the inputs for your basic facility information, listing all the fuel types combusted by any emission sources, from equipment during the report year, listing and defining all emission sources at the facility, and then providing all the throughputs or material usage for emission sources, which we use by the tool to calculate all associated processes for that piece of equipment or emission source. Also, you're reminded to review your input data and calculations after you've put that data in. Also, report any of the associated tax and ODCs along with those emissions or those emission sources. I mentioned earlier uploading supporting documentation. So if you are going to be using a different emission factor based off of, let's say, AP42 or some other literature, source test results, that all needs to be uploaded to the tool in your report so that when we review your report, we will have some frame of reference of what you were using in order to come up with those emission factors. The tool also has a feature where you can run data validation. So once you press that button, it'll cover or identify for you all the errors that might have occurred during the report or any deficiencies while you are doing your data entry. So that's a helpful feature. Make sure you run through that before you submit. And then also, again, just keep copies of all your submittals. What will be available now once you submit the report are electronic copies or versions of the Excel report, your PDF, and I think there's one other file, but that is all now downloadable and you can keep that for your records. Okay, so we'll go over some quick frequently asked questions. Again, people are always asking, what emissions am I supposed to report? So again, if you're applicable to the program, you're supposed to be submitting emissions from all stationary and portable sources from both permitted and non-permitted equipment. That sounds probably overly broad, and so it might be easier to know what you're not supposed to report. So here's a list of things that you should not be reporting in your AER: on-road or mobile equipment, on-road, off-road motor vehicles, state-registered portable equipment, PERP, any architectural coatings, utility equipment, your blowers, your lawnmowers, clean air solvents, and also non-combustion charbroilers and deep fat fryers operated by restaurants and other eating establishments. As far as VOCs are concerned, we do have a rule that provides a list of exempt materials, and you can find that in Rules 102. So make sure that you're aware that you don't need to report those VOCs. Supporting documentation, again, when you upload these documents, some of the supporting documentation will be for emission factors, but you also might have some gas or fuel records that you're using for throughputs, so that's a handy place where you can upload those documents as well. And then for other types of documentation that you think should be uploaded, you can always refer to our help and support manual or section on our AER webpage. There's also a link in the web tool itself. I think it's on the bottom. You can click on that and it'll take you straight to the help and support page as well. So how long should you keep your records? We recommend a minimum of 5 years in the event that you get audited. Again, maintain copies of everything you use in order to provide the data in your report, your fuel usage records, your material usage records, source test reports, and any other type of supporting documentation that you refer to in your report. So program supports, again, all our instructions, a lot of our materials, guidelines, that's all available on our webpage, our AER webpage, and we've listed the URL here. We do have an AER email, support email that you can always call. We feel that every single day, or every single working day. We also have a hotline that you can call, which our team is, again, Tuesday through Friday, manning, so that if it does go to voicemail, we do check the voicemails as well, so that's something that you can use. AB2588, that program also has their own email address and hotline numbers, so if needed, you can also contact them through these two resources. I went over a lot of changes and upgrades based on Rule 301 the amendment back in June. So if you would like to kind of see how that development occurred and the concepts, the board package with all the rule development documents are listed here. You can access them through this URL. And if you still have questions, you can contact our rule development team 4301. The program supervisor is listed here, Shah Dubarian, so you can reach him by email. Okay, so with that wraps up kind of the general program information. We'll roll right now into the reporting tool itself. I'll hand it over to our senior quality engineer, Mani Ferozian, and after his section, we'll open up the floor for Q&A.
Thank you, Eugene. Good morning. I guess before I start, so I kind of address the need of the audience here, the AQMD. How many of you are reporting for the first time? Okay, quite a bit. And any reclaim facilities? 1, 2, and AB 2588. And I guess if you're a consultant, I see a few familiar faces. You basically represent all these facilities, so I count you as well. And so I'll try to touch on sections that are applicable to all these requirements. I guess one thing that we always remind the reporters is the intent of our reporting tool. The goal is to collect emission data for all the emission sources. That sometimes is not consistent with how your permits are issued. Sometimes for certain equipment, a group of emission sources are aggregated and called permit unit or permitted unit. I'll give you an example here. Let's say you have a printing press and you have a dryer. Sometimes our permitting division aggregates these, issue one permit with one application and one permit number. Those need to be disaggregated. There are a couple reasons for it. One is we want to basically see where the emission from each source is coming from. The other point or goal that we're trying to achieve is we categorize the emission sources within our reporting tool to give you options and basically automate the calculation for you. Let's say a printing press, as far as calculating emissions and emission calculation methodology, is different than a dryer, which is a combustion source. So you kind of want to, disaggregate this because one requires fuel emission factor for the fuel combustion. The other one has some sort of manufacturer standard or VOC content of the material that is used for printing. So that's the goal. So keep that in mind. Every year, for those that are reporting for the first time, we upload the entire permit profile for your facility into a reporting tool and perform this disaggregation. From that point on, I guess, which applies to this year, it's on the burden is on the facility to update the permit profile. If you cancel some of the permits for some of the devices, I'll show you how to designate them as not operational and add all the equipments that you get permit for. The main sections of our reporting tool, as you can imagine, we need facility information, contact information. And the way the reporting tool operates, we have certain information, facility configuration, your emission sources that are always set. If you don't modify your facility, if you don't cancel permits and whatnot, that stays the same. So that's the first time that you report, you set that part up. And if there's no modification to your facility, you only need to report from the first year going forward. You just need to update the throughputs. So basically, you configure your facility, enter your emission factors, and from now on, it's just a matter of going to the tool for the following years and update your throughputs. So the first year requires more work, but the tool is automated. Going forward, it should be simple. And it has some data validation capability to catch any mistakes in any field that you may have missed. And last but not least, as Eugene indicated, is the submission. Now the submission is truly electronic. And as part of submission, as it was indicated, you have the option of paying the payment if you're subject to that option online. So as I indicated, we categorize the emission sources within the tool. These are the list of the classifications or categories. External combustion sources, you have examples, boilers, dryers, ovens, flares. Internal combustion sources, engines, turbines. Spray coating operation, I guess I saw a few people, I believe they work for auto body shops, and this applies to them. You have a spray booth, you're reporting for that. And then other use of organics, any organics except the paint that you apply at the spray booths is captured under other use of organics. Storage tanks, if you have a storage tank at your facilities, both for fuel dispensing, certain operations have like a little tank, gasoline tank, and dispensing operations. Or if you work for a petroleum terminal, or if you represent refineries and petroleum terminals, you report emissions from the tanks. I guess it's a good point to bring up the matter about EPA tanks. It's a software that Environmental Protection Agency developed back in time, and they followed the guideline in Chapter 7 of AP 42, which is their guideline for petroleum product storage. And that software hasn't been updated for a while. Actually, EPA stopped supporting it. And November of 2019, the guideline that dictated all the methodologies was updated, but the software hasn't been updated. So we get some questions from mostly consulting firms that, what are we gonna do? Because that change was finalized in November of last year, we didn't really have much time to address that. For 2019, if you use EPA tanks, go ahead, use it. We accept that. If you have fugitive components, you're subject to District Rule 1173, 76, 462. You use this category. Any other process, basically none of the above option would be other processes. And there are certain capabilities within the tool that allows you to report non-routine emissions. If you have a spill, startup, shutdown, and so on and so forth, use this category. As far as emission data entry, you need to identify a process. And as I said, the second component of the tool, once your devices are configured within the tool, you identify processes, enter the throughput, emission factors, and the tool calculates the emission for you. Some of the features that our tool have, as I indicated, once you report the first year, second year is simple. What you need to do is you go to the tool, you import your configuration. I'll show you how. So it lets you import from the last year. Everything gets imported except your throughputs. And then it allows you to allocate process to each source of emission. I again explain what process means. And if you have multiple devices associated with one emission source, you capture that. You're allowed to tell or indicate if the equipment is permitted, non-permitted, and the tool is intuitive. It calculates, it performs some of the unit conversions for you. So if you have, emission factors in different unit than your throughput, it takes care of that. And then in our tool, you see all your emissions, criteria toxics, and if you're willing to calculate greenhouse gases, you see them at the same location. It has some of the emission factors and parameters built into it. You're allowed to upload supporting documents. Eugene indicated about our new policy about source tests. If you get that proof, why not upload it to the tool? Then nobody's going to ask you a question in the future. And it's hard to keep record, right? That's a good place to put those records. Or if you have source test analysis, you can upload it. As I indicated, EPA tanks, if you calculate emissions from multiple tanks, you can automatically upload that data from Epa Tanks software to our tool. It's automated. There are fields for you to explain your assumptions and whatnot. You don't need to complete the whole reporting process. Anywhere you can stop, save it, and come back to it. Make sure you save though. And it has the option to perform some back-of-the-envelope calculation as far as greenhouse gases. If you're familiar with those programs, the state of California and at the federal level, there are reporting requirements. If you're familiar with those programs, you know that depending on the size of equipment you have, type of facility you have, there are different tiers for calculating combustion emissions. So our tool has limited capability of calculating only based on tier 1. So this is a good starting point for you, but it's not per se fully complying with those regulations. And as I indicated, it only accounts for combustion emissions. When you report to those programs, you have other sources of emissions that are not combustion. And it has conversion calculations, and there are a bunch of summary tables that allows you to perform internal QA/QC. And let's go and see the reporting tool. For the next few slides, still stick to the PowerPoint because it's for the sake of time, it's easier. So if you're first time to our program, if you're reporting for the first time, you go to the reporting tool main page. It's like any email account that you have. You need a username, password. If you don't have a username and a password, there's a link, register here. You click on that, it prompts you to another page, which you enter basic contact information, a username, password, and the tool generates an account for you. Let me take a step back. As far as how it works, each user has his own account with a username and password. As far as the facility itself, facility can be pulled up. Once you log into your account, you can pull up the facility using the facility ID and a PIN that is provided in the letter that you receive from the district. So your user account is for you as far as when the report is submitted on their facility. And using your logging information, you sign off. If you're the one who's submitting the report, again, you use your the password to submit the account, and the reporting system keeps track of who submitted. But keep that in mind. If you use consultants, they're going to need your facility ID and PIN. So be cautious. Don't give that to everybody, because whoever gets a hold of that information, they just need two-step registration to get into your account and make any changes. And once you submit and your registration, and you press the sign up, you get a confirmation page. And most important thing, you're not done yet. You're gonna receive an email at the email account that you use to sign up or register. You need to go to that email. You're provided a link. You need to click on it and activate your account. That link is good for 72 hours. After that, it expires. So make sure you follow that step. After that, you should be able to log into the tool. If not, give us a call or send us an email, and we'll address any issues you have. If you forget your password, similar to your email account, there is a link provided here on the main page to reset your password. If you press that, it's going to ask you to enter your email. There are two possible scenarios. It's going to recognize the email, which is going to tell you a link for the resetting your password was sent. If not, it's going to say no record. I don't recognize your email. Then in that case, maybe you want to give us a call. And it's going to send you an email with the link. You click on the link, and it prompts you to another window, new password, same as your email. Now I'd like to switch to the main reporting tool. I'll try to speak louder so you can hear me. That's fine. Yeah. So if you know how to access our tool, if you go to AQMD main webpage, which I'm sure you know how to get there, but you can Google Southcoast AQMD. You can go to online services, emission reporting, and then annual emission reporting. It prompts you to the web page. And since I'm, I want to demonstrate the electronic payment option, which is new this year, I'm going to use a different database, if you will. So I'm not using the live one because we don't want to interact with that one because everything is connected to our finance system. So I'm using a different system. But basically, you click on this link, it prompts you to the web page. What I have is the mirror image of that. So I'm going to log in. I have the test login. So I have an account created. I log in. It's going to prompt me to this page, which, as I indicated, you need a username and you need a facility ID and PIN to access the facility. So I'm going to log into a facility. So the first thing you're going to see is you're going to see your facility name. I have a test facility here. And then you're going to see all the previous reports submitted for that facility. And then if the report, by looking at the year, it tells you what year that report was for, the status. I guess in this case, it shows work in progress and available. You're going to see multiple statuses or different types. If it's submitted, it says submitted. If it's work in progress, somebody initiated it but haven't completed the task. And if it's available, it's just we added it, nobody has touched it. So what you need to do is, if you're reporting for 2019, you go to that open link, you open your facility. As you saw for this facility, previous reports have been submitted. So for me to transfer all that configuration from the previous year, you're provided a link, import last year. The first time that you log in, you want to just start working on your report, use that import option. After that, if you accidentally press that button and you import, it's going to wipe out whatever you entered. So I guess just a warning here, that link, probably you just want to use it once. Otherwise, it will overwrite what you have. So once you click on it, it's, of course, we just didn't want you to make a mistake. It's going to prompt you and ask you a question, do you really want to, are you sure it's going to overwrite, yada, yada, yada. And then you say yes. It's going to think. And as you see, it did a little bit of thinking. I didn't have that many devices for this facility, so it was kind of quick. For facilities like petroleum refineries, they have 1,000 devices, so it may take time. So it may run into like even 20, 30 minutes. Be aware of that. So for the sake of time, I created a facility that has some devices, and let me switch to that facility. So as I indicated here, I guess I have more. You see some of these reports have been submitted. When it's submitted, it has submittal date. So now I want to go to my 2009. So I imported the data. So and if you would like to go step by step, there are orange buttons that are provided at the bottom of the pages. You can just press on those. If you know and you want to what you're doing, or you want to toggle between pages, there are shortcuts or shortcut links that are provided for different sections of the report to the left. So I'm going to just do step by step for the sake of people that are doing this for the first time. I start here, It's going to prompt me to the facility information, whatever link, shortcut link, it's going to highlight it so you know where you are with the list. It gives you general facility information. This is something we upload, so you don't have the capability to change those. Eugene kind of went through these, so I'm not gonna go over them. But if you see any of these designations that are not matching what your facility is, give us a call. We can fix that. So one other. I guess caveat here, anything with asterisk, like any other online tool that you use, is required. So you need to make sure those information are entered. And longitude, latitude, I didn't enter it. It wasn't required. You can enter it. Equipment address, we upload that from your permit because we want to make sure it's consistent with your permit. But sometimes the mailing address is different. You may want to put your corporate office. So you can enter that information here. If it's the same as equipment address, you don't need to basically repeat what you have up here. You can just check this box and it populates it. North American Industrial Classification, system code or NACS or SIC code, another standard code for type of industry you have, or pre-populated. But if you check that, if you're not happy with what we entered, you think it's different, you can enter it and we'll update it. Brief description about your operation, I left it blank because it wasn't required. If you would like to add that, you can add that. Industrial type, there's a drop-down menu. You can select whatever applies. I selected a wastewater treatment. Facility operating status, if you're a GRU reporter, you've been reporting for ages, every year that you transfer data from previous year, this gets deleted because we want you to enter what your status is, right? So that's one of the error messages you're gonna get if you forget. But keep that in mind. Although the facility information might be always the same, there are certain fields that you still need to enter every year. I'm gonna intentionally leave that blank so I get an error at the end, and we'll get to it. And there are a couple check boxes provided here. If the facility, if you would like to calculate the greenhouse gas emission within the tool, subject to the limitation that I explained, you can check this box. Some of these boxes make changes to the other windows down the line, and it gives you a disclaimer that this is going to change the forms, and there are changes to the tool. So you agree with it, actually, as I indicated, add additional fields to fill out. If you're subject to state, which is a resources board, California Resources Board, and if you're subject to federal EPA, you have IDs for those programs, you can enter them. You're going to uncheck it. One thing we recommend about the greenhouse gas, try to think ahead of time. If you would like to calculate it, make that decision and stick to your decision. It's not recommended that you do it and at the end you go and check it off, because some of your interface is going to change. And also keep in mind that if you activate that data gets provided to us. We don't provide it to the state. If you're under those programs, you still need to report independently to them. Keep that in mind. If your facility generated electricity, you check this box. It asks for your facility nameplate, type of generating facility. And if you're subject to Rule 1173 and 1176, which require quarterly leak inspections, you check this box. If you're a small business, Eugene touched on the definition of a small business, and you have a link here to look it up. You check that. And last but not least, if you're planning on reporting any non-routine emission for that year, you need to check this box. This is going to translate into adding different windows and links where you can enter the non-routine emissions. So without checking this, those are not going to appear to you. So keep that in mind. I put the facility contact as myself because I want to go through the submittal process and whatnot. And there are confirmation emails that I'll be receiving. chances are, you're the main contact at the facility, but you have a boss at the corporate to report to, which is considered authorized facility representative. You can put their name down by unchecking these. For now, I guess I indicated the main contact preparer and authorized facility representative is me. But if you use consultants, you can put their name down as preparer, and then your boss, and you'll be the facility contact. For the sake of time, I assume everything, basically all three roles are the same. And you enter the operating schedule for your facility. If you would like to claim any information as confidential, you use this box. But you need to check first, your data is confidential, and you provide any comments. Keep that in mind. Emission data is not confidential. So emission for your facility is public information, and we'll post it on our website. Anything else, throughput, you can claim it as not confidential. So as I indicated, orange boxes at the bottom. You click on them. It takes you through the whole process step by step. So I'm going to do that next. Save. Next. So if you're subject to Assembly Bill 2588, AB 2588 facilities are subject to different reporting requirements. Every 4 years, they need to report additional list of toxics. Also, as far as the facility setup, they need to provide information about their distance from different type of receptors. I guess if you have any question about that, you can contact our AB 2588 group. But once you set this up, I guess you set it up once, and then you don't need to go through it. I provided the minimum information needed there, so I'm going to skip that because it doesn't apply to a lot of you guys. And last part is the facility status. So we know that the status of the facility may change. You may shut down. You may go through change of ownership, change of equipment location, or your emission may significantly drop because of business reason, economy is not good, or it's really good. And any of these check boxes that you check, you can provide information applicable to that category, but it prompts you to provide additional information which is applicable. We also have a checkbox for exemption request. If you think you were pulled into the program by mistake, you can indicate that here, but you need to report. And but by designating this, you basically let us know, hey, I think I'm exempt. And if you use alternative calculation, you can explain it. So I'm going to minimize this for the sake of time, but just know that those are available to you. You can provide us more information. Next step is if you're combusting any fuel, you need to define them. You need to tell the tool, hey, I'm combusting these type of fuels. So I've already added a few. I'm going to add another one so you see the process. You call add new fuel. It's a drop-down menu, and then let's say I add refinery gas. And then there is a height value provided here. It's pretty much used for the greenhouse gas calculations. And but if you're not checking that option off, so it's not going to basically used. And you can change that to any other, height value, if you will. But because I'm not reporting greenhouse gases, so I'll just leave it the way it is, and I'll save it. And it lists it under the list of fuels I have. Emission sources. Remember I told you the first year we upload your entire permit profile. From now on, the burden is on you. You basically make all the adjustments that you need. So for this facility, I already uploaded. For the sake of time, a couple devices here. So you see I have a heater, I have an engine, and I have a turbine with the duct burner and a stack. And I have a boiler. So these tables, it's like a summary table. By clicking on open, you can go to that actual device and change the configuration or description of that equipment. If we upload your permit profile, you're going to see these two columns filled out automatically. Basically, the permit description that you have in your permit is going to show up here. Because I populated this manually and it wasn't uploaded, you don't see those. And I'll show you, I'll actually going to go to one of these, so you'll see those details. but high level. And tool assigns AER device ID that's just specific to this reporting tool. So it's not consistent with any IDs that you have in your permit or whatnot. You can add a name to your emission source, because not necessarily you may like the name that or permitting division assigns to your equipment, boiler application number 253. You may want to just call it John Zink boiler. So you can add that description, so when you look at this, you know what boiler is that. And then emission category, which we went through the list that I had in the PowerPoint, external combustion, internal combustion. And if it has emissions and additional information. If you would like to, bless you, if you would like to go and report the emission, the link for the reference is for that, so which prompts you to the next window, I want to report my emissions. People have different preference here. Some people like to compile all their emission sources first, then go report emissions last. Some people like to just do it just one by one. So by providing these links, you can do whatever you like. Let me add a new emission source. So I'm gonna, so when you click on add a new emission source, it prompts you to this page. You select permitted, and it gives you some application numbers that are pre-existing and were populated. You can add your new. As I said, the first time this information was uploaded. From now on, let's say I retire a piece of equipment, I have a new permit for my boiler. You need to go here and add it again and claim the old one as shut down or not in operation. I'll show you those features. But let's say this is a new boiler. I'm going to enter the application number that my permit has, the permit number, depending on the year the permit was issued. Some of them have letters in them. And the tool automatically assigns the AER device ID for you. And let's say I'm going to call it boiler. This is going to be a boiler. I call it boiler 3. At the facility, I call it boiler 3. So it lets you enter that information. Here is one part you would like to pay close attention to. If it's operating in normal operation, you're willing to, or you're planning on report emissions for it, this is the option for you to select. Sometimes you have multiple equipment, you're not operating it, or the way the permit is issued, sometimes they go and break down the pieces of equipment associated with one configuration to such a detail that you get application number and permit number for every single component of a configuration. For example, I have a combustion turbine. It has a duct burner and it has a stack. They may break them down to one application for the turbine, one application for the duct burner, one application for the stack. The stack doesn't generate emission by itself. Or in refineries, you may have vessels. Vessel doesn't, by itself doesn't, generate any emissions. So this option allows you to say, okay, this piece of equipment, although it's my permit, but it doesn't generate any emissions. Or you may report fugitive components, or you may have a piece of equipment that you have it, you're gonna need it in the future, but you didn't operate it. So you can claim that it's not in operation. Or something was uploaded. When we upload a piece of equipment, you cannot change it, you cannot delete it. So if that device is not in operation anymore, or you removed it, you can use the shutdown or remove category. So except non-operation, except normal operation in fugitive components, all the other features that you have is going to tell the tool, hey, I'm not planning on reporting any emissions for the non-in-operation, shutdown, and non-generating emissions categories. So then it's not going to ask you for data down the line. So let's say if I say not generating emissions, status year, basically you indicate from which year that status applies. Let me save it, and then you can save and return to the list of emission sources by clicking on this. So if I select that, it added my boiler 3, but see where it's asked for has emission, it says no. That means when you go to the reporting section, it's not going to even show this equipment to you. So keep that in mind. So I'm planning on reporting emission for it. So I'm going to tell the tool, no, this is normal operation. I want to report emissions for it. What that happens is, if I select that, it asks me to designate the category of that emission source. Again, we have like a list of cookie cutter or specific categories. So this is going to be a boiler, 6-hour combustion. I'm going to, designate it to be boiler greater than 100 million BTU. And reason behind breaking these down by firing rate is because our default toxic emission factors are different depending on rating of the boilers. That's why we broke them down to so many categories. So make sure you pick the right category. So you can enter, it's not required, the design capacity. I'm going to put 200 million BTU per hour. So my boiler is added. I have everything I needed. And there are two ways. Let's say I'm done. I configured, all my devices are there, and I checked it twice. So I want to go ahead and report. All the other reporting, let me take a step back, show you some other thing. We talked about duplicate. So I gave you an example of duct burner, turbine, stack. So this is basically what I have here. Let's say I'm planning on reporting the emissions under the duct burner itself and the turbine. Let's say I don't have a SIMS on the stack. I want to calculate emissions directly at the turbine and the duct burner because there are different type of combustion sources, emission factors that are default or different. So I segregate this, but I have a stack. What am I going to do with the stack? It's technically in operation. Emission is coming out of the stack, so really don't feel comfortable calling that it doesn't generate emissions. You use the duplicate. One thing that is new this year is we added a field for you to say emission reported under ES number, meaning that I call this duplicate. The tool is asking, so if it's duplicate, where are you capturing the emissions under? So you enter the ES number, so I dropped the ES because it says ES number here. I just put the digits, 44 and 45, which if I go to my list, are gonna be the duct burner and the turbine. So that's new. So if you use duplicate, be ready that it's gonna ask you for additional information where you're planning on capturing the emissions. So I added boiler 3. Now I wanna report emissions. Once you add a device, the tool assigns a process. What process means, it's basically a functionality within the tool that we understand that sometimes depending on type of throughput you run into your equipment, you may get different emissions. To give you an example, I may have a boiler. It may run on 2 different types of fuel. I may run it on digester gas and natural gas. Emission factors for different type of fuels you combust are different. So we thought if we trying to basically put one single emission factor, you need to go through sophisticated calculation of calculating weighted average, yada, yada, yada. So we define process. So then you can break down my device as one device, but because my fuel are different, I define 2 processes, one for natural gas, one for the digester gas. That way, it allows me to report exact throughput for each of the 2 fuels and use the specific emission factor for that fuel. This also comes handy for a lot of body shops because the paint they use are different. Their VOC content is different, solid content is different. So basically, they can list all the type of paints they have and report individually. So I'm gonna, for this boiler, I'm gonna add 2 processes, assuming that it's gonna run on digester gas and natural gas. So first we start with natural gas. So I click on the open link. So, and then it's gonna prompt me to this page with 3 steps. So start with step 1, open. It's gonna ask me, hey, again, asterisk is what I need to enter, the bare minimum. So for the sake of time, I just stick to the asterisks. But it's worthy to add additional information. For me to actually recognize these 2 processes, I'm gonna just quickly put natural gas here under process name so I remember which one is which. Fuel, I'm gonna select natural gas. It also asks for applicable rule. As I indicated, the rule is intuitive. So it basically gives you an option of the rules that may apply to this piece of equipment. So I'm gonna just, pick a random one. Actually, that wasn't even random, whatever. So I'll pick that. So step 1 is completed. Once you complete step 1, it asks you, hey, we have default toxic emission factors. Do you want me to apply? And you basically have to agree with that. There's no other options. But if you're not in agreement with those factors, you can always go and change them down the line. But it's a good starting point that tells you for this type of combustion per se, we're expecting to see these toxics. Okay. Then step 2, you need throughput. I'm going to report, let's say, 100 million SCAF because it's natural gas, and save it. It populates it. Now for the criteria emissions, for some of the combustion fuels, we have default emission factors. But we know that some reporters want to report they have source tests, they have SIMs, and all that. So we don't automatically force default emission factors, but there's a link provided. If you're willing to use our defaults, you can click on it, and then it's going to populate everything. This facility is reclaim. So with the reclaim, and it's reclaim NOx and SOx. So you can always go and change that populated emission factor. I'm going to do it for NOx. When I open NOx for this device, it's going to tell me, okay, I use default. Let's say I'm not in agreement. I have a SIMS. I want to use my SIMS. That's more accurate, less stringent. So let's say emission factor from SIMS is 1 pound per million SCAF. And because it's reclaim, the tool is going to, whatever combustion source you add, it's going to designate it as reclaim source. It counts it toward your reclaim emissions when it comes to NOx, and this facility is reclaim NOx and SOx, so it's going to do it for both. Reclaim facilities, if you're familiar, you go through audits for our compliance division. They calculate emissions, they provide the data to us every year, we compare the two, and if there are some discrepancies, we flag it, we contact your facility, hey, how come these are different? Sometimes this, this discrepancy is coming from the fact that the facility either checked or unchecked this by mistake. So when our tool calculates the total, it's like an accounting per se, accounting for what emission is reclaim or not. So if you think maybe you're at the reclaim facility, maybe everything is reclaim. That's not true. So if you're a refinery, flares are not reclaim source. If you have contractor bringing portable devices and you operate in less than 72 hours like an engine, that's not considered reclaim. So to address those discrepancies and whatnot, so if you uncheck this reclaim box, in the past, nothing would happen. This year, we added this common box that is required for you to explain why it's not reclaim. So with that, if you accidentally uncheck it, you cannot pass this stage. You're going to get an error message. So that way, we make sure that you know that you're intentionally checking that reclaim box off. You're not accounting for it, and you're providing some explanation. So we don't bug you for things that are done intentionally. So I'm going to just assume this is a reclaim source. And I forgot my emission factor. So I have a SIMS. I'm going to change this emission factor, which I did, to 1. And I'm going to say I use SIMS. Save. And so I'm all good. Let's say I'm in agreement with all the default emission factors that the tool provided. Now remember, I had another process to add, right? That was my natural gas. I want to add my digester gas. So I click on the orange button at the top, if you didn't catch it. So there's this orange button that asks me to emission source process preference. So click on that. It prompts you to this page. You can add a process. Now I'm going to add the process, and let's say I call it DG. Digester gas. Okay, it's going to open the same window for me, but this time I'm going to pick digester gas. Whatever rule applicable, I just select a random option just for the sake of time. Again, I want to populate the toxic, and then throughput. I put, let's say, 10 million SCAF, save, it populates everything. Let's say for the sake of time, I click on default, nothing happens. That means that we don't have default for that. And then I guess you need to go to a different option, either your permit limit, you have source test. Let's say I have source test running the equipment on digester gas. So I'm gonna just put those numbers in, forgot to, and then, always you need to tell where you're getting the emission, what the source of emission factor is coming from, or is. So I, try to select, some random source of emission factors so you see what are available. One key feature, probably most of you consultants in this room are here for the new toxic fee. And as Eugene indicated, in the past we have 24 toxics, which mostly was a specific species plus a group of toxics. Let's say PAH, which is standing for polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. Let's stick to PAH. That's easier. But as far as the fees, species associated with that family have different fees. So a lot of facilities would like to further speciate. If you're willing to do that, let's say for this, I did source this, but instead of PAH, you have two PAH here. The first one is for the entire family. The second one, if I click on it, is for the naphthalene, which is a member of that family. But let's say, I don't want to report by the family group. My source list for toxic gives me every single species of PAH. So then you come here, you uncheck the default, maybe you want to zero this because it doesn't let you delete it. But then you want to speciate every single PAH you have. So I'm going to just add one. So the way it works, you add a toxic, you come here, this facility is AB 2588, so you're going to see way more toxics, but technically we have 24 toxics listed here, which you can further speciate. If you further speciate and count them all, it's going to be the 66 that Eugene told you. So I want to look for PAH, which is here. Now, the second drop-down menu allows you to further speciate which member of the family I want to report. And then you do that. And then you need to enter the emissions, emission factor, and where you got it from. Let's say I got it from SourceTest. So you can follow the same approach. And can select other. I'll get an error message if I leave it that way. But you can see the default ones you need to kind of zero out if you want to further speciate. But if you're not planning on further speciate, just stick to the default, don't change them. So I'm pretty much done with configuring and reporting. I had other devices already entered the emission for those. So if you want to go by order to the left, of course, it's going to ask you back to emission source, preference source. Remember I told you you can either go step by step by orange, columns, or you can click on the blue links. So if I click on the report process emission, it kind of aggregates equipment that you have by source category. Let's say all the external combustions together, internal combustion together. That allows you to kind of see everything from the same nature, close to each other. But before going to the summary, I'm going to skip summary. I'm going to go to the data validation. I want to see how great of a job I did. So data validation, there's the orange button. You click it. It's going to run the validation. So we have two, as far as validation messages, we have two. You either get error. With the error, you cannot submit, or you get warning. Warning means, hey, FYI, this doesn't look right, or hey, be careful with this. So as you see, I have an error. It's usually shown in red. So I have one. Remember in the beginning, I left the facility status blank. I told you I wanted to give me an error. And then there are a couple of warnings we added this year based on the common mistakes that we see facilities making. One is about ammonia. If you have combustion, if you report combustion and pick our default emission factors for toxics, it adds ammonia. But depending on type of control technology you have for NOx, which if you're familiar with, SNCR, selective non-catalytic reduction, or SCR, selective catalytic reduction, which usually it includes some sort of ammonia injection. You're injecting ammonia to the stack, of course you're gonna see higher ammonia coming out of the stack. So these warnings, depending on type of fuel you have, gives you and basically a warning tell you, hey, we have different emission factors for ammonia, and they're all listed here. The way the tool operates. So the way the tool operates, to be conservative, it picks the highest. But that highest, which is mostly for SNCR, may not be applicable to you. You may have a little engine. There's no ammonia injection. There's no SCR, SNCR. So it basically gives you basically all the emission factors, and the least being that you don't have those control technologies. So you can go back, which I'm going to go back. Let's say for one of the equipment that combusts natural gas, I'm going to go back and change that to 3.2 because right now it's 18. So remember, I added boiler 3. So the quickest way would be going directly from here. Let's say for my natural gas, I'll go here and ammonia. It's 18, which is the highest, but I don't have SNCR, SCR, so you go here and overwrite that to 3.2. So hopefully, ideally, you don't get a lot of these validation errors in comments. Okay. So it seems that I forgot to enter where I'm getting the emission factor from. AQMD default. Save. Going back to validation. So hopefully you don't get a lot of this, but it's worth it to go through them because it helps you. We try to throw some of the typical errors that a lot of reporters make. And down the line, less emission is going to translate less fee for you guys, so it's beneficial. Also, we added a new common mistake as a error, not an error, but a note here. Methylene chloride is not a VOC. A lot of facilities, it's a toxic. But because it's sounds organic, people assume it's a VOC. So there's another warning here for you guys. So if you have that, make sure you don't account it for VOC. So it's worthy this year to go through some of these validation messages. Again, I'm not gonna change the that error that I have because I wanted you guys to see what happens in the submittal side. Let's take a step back. Go to summaries. There are three summary tabs for you provided here. Criteria is the same as before for those of you that are reporting for the first year. This is a one stop shop for you to see how much of each criteria pollutant is reported for each category. And let's say it's good for your final QA/QC because if you mistype a number and you get a ridiculously high number, you can basically pinpoint it and go figure out where it's coming from. Let's say I'm not happy with my CO emission for external combustion. I click on it. It opens a window for me telling me how much of this 48 tons are coming from which sources. And looking at these emissions, if you're not happy, you can just click on the P1. It's going to directly prompt you to the page. I'm going to click on it so you'll see. It's going to directly prompt you to the page that emission calculation is happening so you can make any adjustments. So, toxic. So this is probably what I guess attracted a lot of consultants in this room. So it went through a major overhaul because our toxic fee calculations significantly were changed from last year. As Eugene indicated, we have 4 fee categories for toxic now. Just a recap, you're subject to toxic fees if you trigger our reporting thresholds of 4 tons for criteria pollutants except for CO, which is 100 tons. If you're subject to AB 2588, if you are subject to state uniform toxic criteria reporting requirement, or AB 617. So if you're not subject to those, you shouldn't be paying here. These should be all 0 for you. So as I indicated, the first category is a basic toxic fee. There is a table provided in our Rule 301, Table 4, which lists all the thresholds for all the toxic. If you exceed for any of your equipment, even one toxic for one equipment, you'll be charged that flat fee or basic fee of $78. Second category is cancer potency weighted emissions. So I click on Table 1. It's going to basically, we provided the equation that is in the rule to calculate that fee. The way it's calculated, at the facility level, you aggregate all your emissions for every single toxic species, the 66 that Eugene pointed out. And for each of those 66, there is a cancer potency factor and multi-pathway factor. These are different for each species. Remember, for the PAH, I show you the example that you can further speciate for that family. The family has certain multi-pathway factors or cancer potency factor. If you further speciate it, it may translate into different factors. The emission mass is the same, but those multi-pathway factors and cancer potency factors are different. So, and then you multiply that, all that translates into cancer potency weighted emission. Now, to add the fee to it, for each pound of cancer potency weighted emission, it's $5. So the table here kind of basically calculates what I just explained to you. All the 66 toxic alphabetically are ordered, are listed in order here. So chlorinated dioxin dibenzopyrins, depending on which individual species you have, you see they're repeated, but actually they're different components. And to basically tell that if they're from the same family group, one shortcut would be the TAC group. If they're the same, they're from the same family. But you see they're all listed individually. So let's look at benzene for the sake of our analysis. It tells me the annual threshold. Remember I told you there's a threshold in the rule? We put it here so you can exactly see what's happening. So the threshold is 2. Whatever I reported for the facility, if I add it up, it adds up to 86.47, which you see here. But for the cancer potency weighted fee, we're only accounting for 67.8 of it. Why? We don't have time, but that would be a fun question. So, who has diesel engine? Anybody reporting for diesel engine? Everybody should raise their hand. And consultants have a lot of them. So this is one of takeaway because we're trying to reduce the questions that we get on hotline. For diesel engines, just for diesel engines, there is a toxic that was added, Eugene pointed out, diesel particulate matter. Diesel particulate matter, when you account for it as a toxic, it technically accounts for all the other toxics that the tool calculates. When you combust diesel, you have cadmium, you have nickel, you have even some VOCs, benzene, you name it. Diesel particulate matter kind of accounts for all those. So if we come and account for benzene from the combustion of the diesel, and then I charge you, not me, but and we account for fees for the diesel particulate matter, that will be double counting. So any toxics except diesel particulate matter that is coming from the diesel engines that you're reporting, which I have few in this report, need to be back out for calculation of cancer potency weighted emissions. So that's where the discrepancy is coming from. We added this asterisk, which explains to you what's going on. It says pollutant annual emission is 86.47. Total used for CPW emission fees is 67.84. Some of the emissions are excluded from a CPW emission fees calculation due to related diesel exhaust particulate. So it explains where the discrepancy is coming from. And if I go further to the right, so it gives you, remember I said up here you have cancer potency factor, multipathway factor, it gives you all those factors. So you basically, you see all the components that go to the equation. So I guess the cancer potency for benzene is 0.1, multipathway factor is basically one pathway, 1, and then it calculates, and it actually rounds. And again, if I get the, so it basically what I just explained, it's provided in that asterisk. So if you're not sure what's going on, put your cursor on the asterisk, it explains to you. We actually went beyond that to further simplify it. We put this link called device/process. If I click on it, it opens this subtable here. So it tells you whatever device that you reported benzene for, it lists it here. So I have benzene coming from all these external combustion sources, internal combustion sources, all the processes, how much emission I have. And it says accounted in DPM, true or false, meaning that whatever benzene that I have here that was accounted is coming from a diesel engine, you're going to see true. So basically those are that were backed out toward from that 86.47. You see one true here, 18.63. That's the difference between these two. So if you really want to go to the detail of the calculation, what this discrepancy is coming from, click on this, add up whatever true that you have here, that should be the difference between the two. And for the diesel particulate, as I indicated, I have it here. See the emission, the weighted emission and the total emission are matching, which they should be, because I'm not backing out the diesel particulate. I'm backing out the species that contribute to diesel particulate. And one other caveat here for cancer potency weighted emissions, if you've read the Rule 301, you're exempt from this particular fee if you're more than a mile away from a sensitive receptor or a receptor on that, residential receptor, which I guess we don't foresee many facilities be subject to that exemptions. So let me minimize this. Second table is pretty much similar to what we had before. There are certain pollutants like ammonia, fluorocarbons, and methyl chloroform that it's basically the same as usual. Whatever you report, there is a set fee, except for ammonia, that the same thing that I explained about diesel particulate comes into the picture. We don't want to double count under DPM. So those emissions are factored out from here. That's why you see annual emission is less than the emission that is subject to fees. We're backing out all the diesel engines. Same concept, you have device processes. If you click on that, it shows you where all the emissions that summed up to that 11,130 pounds are coming from. Flat rate device fees. That's another new fee this year. So let's say I have 4 devices. If any of those devices trigger the toxic threshold for any of the pollutants, for that device you get charged a flat fee of roughly $71. If you don't trigger any of the toxic for a certain device, let's say if your throughput is 0 for the device, so you're not generating any emissions, you're not getting charged for that particular device. And again, if you want to go, if you click on the blue link to the right under tax, It shows you for each of the device that you have listed here, for let's say ES43, which is the boiler that I have here, it tells me which of the pollutants triggered and which did not. So you see the annual emission, you see the threshold. If it's false, that your emission is below threshold. If you exceed the threshold, like this one, annual emission is 0.3, but my threshold is 0.2, so you trigger. 1 through here gets you subject to the $171 for that particular device. And if you come across, hey, this device shouldn't have any of that emission, you can click on the blue link to the left with ES number. It's going to prompt you to the exact location of the emissions. I'm not going to go through that. Last but not least, this facility is AB 2588. Table 4 shows a summary of all the pollutants, additional pollutants that that facility needs to report for their quadrennial report. If they're AB 2588, but they're not subject to the quadrennial reporting, you're not going to see that table. And the fun part would be the fee. So because we changed the toxic fee criteria, and probably most of your managers and superiors, that's the part that they pay a closer attention to. We try to provide additional information there. We added, this is new, the top part is the same as previous years, all the criteria pollutants. As far as the toxic fee breakdown, we also give you the breakdown here so you know where your toxic fees breakdown are. One other new thing this year, installments. If your facility, let's say in 2018, reported more than 10 tons of criteria pollutants, except for CO, which is 100 tons. What happens is you're subject to the installment. So around July time, June, July time, you should have received an invoice from AQMD charging you for half of the emissions you reported in the previous year as an installment toward 2019. So in the past, that information was populated and was mostly what you were billed. Now this is linked to our finance system. It tells you how much emission was paid. So if you got that invoice back in time and you send it in, you should see whatever you paid here. If you don't see it here, that means we didn't receive it. So now this is installment paid. That's a new change. And so we went to the validation. Things that are the same as last year. If you want to print your report, you go to this window. You can select everything or individual. And there are Excel reports. We added an Excel report for toxics because now everybody is going to be more concerned about the toxics and want to see the details of the toxics, every single toxic pollutant associated with each piece of equipment. We added that Excel report there, which gives you detailed, toxic information for each piece of equipment. Report submission. Now everything is electronic. You don't need to print the stuff, sign stuff, send in stuff. But, I go to the submittal tab. I don't see any submit button. Why? Exactly. That's why I left it there. So one brilliant thing is you're not going to see the submittal, and you're not done. If you don't submit, if you don't get the confirmation, if it doesn't prompt you to a page that, hey, you're subject to payment, or this is the voucher, send the payment in, you're not done. So make sure you need to be, to complete the requirement, you need to submit the report. So it gives you, I have one error warning, and it explains to you what error is, all the color that I explained. It's already spelled out here because, believe it or not, some reporters leave it off here. So the error, I click on data validation. The link is provided there. You run the validation. I left the facility status blank intentionally. I'm operating. Save it. Don't forget to save. Report submission. Error 0. All green. Voila. We have the submit button. So this is new this year. So this is the part that you want to follow. This is new. You have snapshots in your PowerPoint presentation, but it's good to follow it on the screen. And I guess you have detailed snapshots in your PowerPoint presentation, the copies you have. So I click the Generate AER Submittal. It asks, do you want to generate the report? This is really important here. If I say yes, what the tool does is it generates the report. It sends a copy to AQMD database. Now we basically, for the submittals, we track all the transactions. You submit, a report is generated, timestamp, we exactly know when it was submitted, who submitted it. And in the past, I guess a few of consultants left, they want to pay attention to this. In the past, I repeat it a few times, in the past, before the reporting deadline, facilities would submit a report and they realized that, oh, the contact was changed, I want to change something, I mistyped the throughput, I didn't catch this. They would call us, we would unlock the tool for them before the deadline. That option is not available anymore because everything is electronic and is tied to our finance system. If you submit today, tomorrow you call me, you literally have 2 months till deadline. Hey, I make a mistake, I made a mistake, I want to, make adjustments. You have to go through the online amendment process. So you have to request for amendment, we have to unlock it, that back and forth. So it's not that we can unlock it for you anymore. You have to go through the full amendment process. Keep that in mind. So the report is generated. So what the tool does, it generates the report, a snapshot of all the information you have in the tool, and it basically generates the report. Ready for you to press the submit, so it sends a copy to our database. So if you generate a report, and if you try going and changing something, let me see. I guess it's not, but I guess you're going to see it. I tried it last night. Because I'm using a different server, it's not per se what exactly you see. But what you're going to see is these numbers are going to be grayish. What that means is if you go there, it's not going to allow you to change. And then it's going to give you an error message. The reason is if you want to make any changes prior to submittal, but you generated the report, you need to come and cancel the report. So what it does is, because it's generated a report, let's say you want to submit a report to your boss, and submittal is you put it on his desk. If it's on his desk, he hasn't reviewed it yet, but for you to change it, you have to pull it back. So I cannot change it. What you need to do, you need to come and cancel this report. Once you cancel, you're going to be, all the information is going to be available for change. After submittal, we have to approve it. But prior to submittal, keep that in mind. If you generate the report, everything else is locked. You want to make changes, you got to come here and cancel the generated report. Report generation is basically a report in the software itself. When you say cancel, when it's a cancel generated report, don't be afraid that it's going to delete stuff that you have in the tool. The only way you can delete the stuff is if you go to the first step and import last year. That's the disaster. Here, you can just say yes. What it's going to do is say generate report, which was ready to be submitted, timestamp and stuff. It's going to delete it. It's going to toss it. Now the rest of the tool is open for you to make changes. Let's say now I'm certain, I'm sure, I want to submit it. Sorry about that, I guess, because I'm going to show you the payment. I couldn't use the main server because then it's going to try to generate an invoice for our finance, and we're going to run into issues. We just didn't want to mess with finance system. And I guess be patient. It's going to. All right. That was a good break for me. Get a sip of water. So, instead of signing the report, there are disclaimer or statement for you. What as far as the submit, remember I told you it's going to submit a report to our database once you're done. So instead of you sending me the hard copy and I scan it, put it on our database, everything is done electronically, automatically. So here it gives you the list of stuff that it's going to put on our server. There's going to be a PDF report, which is the same as what you have seen in the past, your PDF report, and you may want to save those. And the Excel files, I told you there's going to be an Excel report for the entire report, and there's going to be an Excel report for the toxic. It tells you here, AER report, Excel, AER report, toxics. So basically, by checking these boxes, you're agreeing that you review these, you're in agreement with the content of these documents that will be submitted. There's additional disclaimer here, or acknowledgement for certain requirements that we have as far as record keeping and what's going to happen. I guess make sure it's not that long. Most of the online things you see, there's going to be pages. This is just going to take you literally a minute. Make sure you review it, at least for the first time you see it, review it. And then you acknowledge that you read and understand the statement above. And I agree on responsibility of AER report submittal. Remember in the beginning I told you have facility contact, you have prepare, you have authorized person, all the information that you put there. In case of this test facility, I put everything as myself. But if you have different people, all the names going to be listed here. But whoever that submits it still needs to follow another step, which is you're going to put your password and the facility PIN. So I'm going to enter my password and my facility PIN. Certify and submit. Are you sure you want to submit? Keep in mind, we cannot unlock the tool. Yes, I want to submit. All right, submittal is completed. The report is submitted. Now is the payment. If your fee, as Eugene indicated, is greater than $300,000, you need to send a check in. You cannot use the online portal. In this case, I throw in way high throughputs, so I get really close to $300,000. Hopefully your emission fees are not going to be that high. Because of two reasons: you don't like to pay. I mean, who likes to pay? And then the second reason would be more than $300, you have to send a check in. It's going to be simpler. You have a company credit card, you can pay and get it over with. So now I guess the tool is going to provide me two options. One is the basically online payment, because again, I'm below the 300 threshold. If this was $300,001, this part wouldn't appear to you, and there would be a red sentence here that above $300,000, you need to send the online portal is not available. But I guess I have two options. So let me show you the second option, which is you're still your company, the way they operate, they like to write checks, or the corporate has to send a check. What you need to do is you need to print this payment voucher, which you saw the link for up here. And what it has the summary report and invoice number. The system already created an invoice in our finance department, so they're ready for the payment. What you need to do is submit this, print this, and send it in with the check to the addresses provided here. And we have different address depending on type of basically mail system you use. If it's a messenger, FedEx, regular snail mail, we have different addresses for you. So you follow this instruction, cut the check, send it in with that voucher, you're done. But let's say you have a credit card and you would like to pay online. You don't like to send the payment in. So you click on the online portal. What it's going to do is it's going to take you out of a reporting tool to our finance system. And you have two options. You have the option of paying with the credit card, which is going to charge you the convenience fee, like any other online bill payment submittal. Or you can use e-check. For the e-check, because it's literally the same as sending a check in, there's not going to be fees. So I'm going to try the credit card, so you see the fee and all that. So it basically shows your invoice information, type of invoices emissions, how much you're paying, $219,000. And I click checkout. So we ask for my credit card information. And I guess I'm going to put my name. And make sure, I guess it has asterisk, so you are required to provide your email address. And you do want that because it sends you a confirmation via email. Okay, continue. Okay. Huh? I guess it's entertaining. People are eating chips. Let's see. Oh, city. That's the problem. Okay, so the whole process was to get here. So there are terms of payment. Again, it's not that long. Make sure you read it, and then you need to agree with it. There's a checkbox here. I agree, and then you continue. So as you see, I'm submitting a big payment, and there is a really big, to me, $5,000 convenience fees. I don't know how much you make, but that's a lot of money for me. So maybe you want to consider the e-check option, which is the same as any e-check. When you pay your property taxes, you just need the routing number and your account number on the check, and you can just submit it electronically. Let's say I'm rich enough to submit that payment and process payment. It's when they process the payment, of course, it thanks you for your payment. And then prompts you to this page. You can view PDF if I click on it, and you can save it. So when you submit that big of a payment, do save that confirmation. And so basically it downloaded it for me, save it because it has some reference numbers for you in case you were asked that this payment wasn't submitted or whatnot, you have a proof. And you also, I'm not going to go to my emails, but you also get an email For the sake of time, I did just a PDF of it. Basically, for the payment you submit it, you also get this. So 2 confirmation. One you print from the website, one is sent to your email account. And then to go back to the reporting tool, you need to press finish here because you're in our finance system. You need to be routed back to the reporting tool. Press finish, it brings you where you started. Now it tells you error has been signed, and basically the payment tables with the addresses and all that disappear. That means it's paid, you're good to go. And as far as downloading reports for your records, all the stuff you need, what you submitted is the PDF report. All those Excel you submitted are here. For the sake of time, I'm not going to open it because we would like to have one-on-one session at the end. But there's an XML file. This is for our IT purposes, which basically tracks the list of submittals, dates, and whatnot. That's if you're like to print it and save it, do so. But that's not something that I guess you need. And other thing I would like to touch on is the show AER history. So basically, this is new this year as well. It shows you basically the timestamps from the point on that we uploaded this, where IT department, timestamp, time and hour. From the point of time that I started playing with the tool, the status was changed to work in progress. The date that you generate that report. Remember, I told you press generate the report. It's like putting the report on your boss's desk. It captures that date as well. And once you submit the report and once you submit the payment, basically you're done. That's the point of time that the online amendment opens to you. That's another reason for me to saying it for the 3rd time. Before submitting the report, starting this year, make sure you're 100% in agreement and you're sure, because we cannot unlock it. And for unlocking it and for you to start the amendment process, let's say you mistype throughput by 2 orders of magnitude. For us to, for you to request for amendment, you have to pay first, right? So, be careful. Don't just, submit it. Make sure everything is in, good shape before pressing the, submit button. But let's say a month down the line, I realize I need to change something. So I come to the tool. Again, it's not paper-based anymore. You come to the tool, you request for amendment. So basically, it pulls up the latest reports, shows them here, and then you need to add a comment that why you want to amend it. Let's say, I guess we encourage for you to be descriptive, but for the sake of time, I say error and boiler. Cannot type this morning. So, but, please provide. Yes. Yes. In the past, yes. The reason for it is, for the initial submittal, our report now is tied to our finance system. And once you press submit, our finance generates an invoice for that amount. That needs to be cleared. And from the, the initial submittal, post-initial submittal, as far as the payment, you got to send in the payment. It's not electronic anymore. But because to make it easier for the submittal side, it's tied to our finance department, and it's a totally different department. That needs to be resolved because you have an outstanding invoice for your facility that needs to be cleared out. And if you're if you've been dealing with the district, if you have outstanding invoice on your account, you don't pay it, you ask for new permits, everything gets suspended. The engineers don't even process your application. They may actually reject your application because you have outstanding Huh? It's like, you have to go to two different systems. That's why I guess I give you as much as, and yes, I guess rigid, but, going through two different chain of commands is going to take time, right? So if you want to, if the error is not that, significant, or your facility is not subject to fees, hey, you can go through that. But that's why I'm giving you, actually, this would be the fourth warning. Make sure when you submit, because it's going to take time, two chain of commands, I cannot guarantee, I'll get it to you before deadline, right? So that's why we give the warning here. And then I press request. Do you want to submit a report amendment? Yes. So it's going to give you this disclaimer that AQMD was notified of your request. So if you go to the facility, this is a new status. It says request for amendment. So meaning that I submitted it. Now when I amend it, it's basically standing in the, basically waiting for AQMD to approve for me to open the report. Huh? Okay, that's a very good question, thanks. So remember this show history? If I come down here, usually when you go to the next step, it populates the previous step, so the current status, it doesn't show it in the history. But now I took one step further, I'm amending it. It shows me that this date, at this time, this was amended, this was submitted and it was paid. Now my status is waiting for amendment. This is the current status. These are the history. So prior to requesting amendment, the submittal status was here. Anything before that was here. So you see the current status, previous status, basically the history. So now it shows you that this time I requested for an amendment, and this is the comment. But as I indicated, be more descriptive about your need for amendment. So I'm going to basically go to. This is basically my and amendments. So basically, this is the approval process on my end. You don't have access to this, so. So basically, I got your request, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically provide, instruction. Let's say I write a comment to my staff. I guess I pick Daniel Cho, and then I'm going to assign it to a particular person. And I approve. So what's going to happen is, see, open for amendment. That means you requested, I approved it, and if you go to the status, report submission, see, you go back to the step before you submit it. Keep that in mind. If you go through the changes now, and then going back to your question, see the step before that when you requested for an amendment, is it history now? The current status is open for amendment. You go through, don't encourage that, but if you go through 10 rounds of amendments, it's going to basically keep the history here. And what your starting point is the last amendment you have. So it doesn't keep the track of what was in the tool prior to that. Of course, if I go to my database, every time you submit a report or snapshot from the whole thing with the certification that you sign goes to my database. I can pull those reports, but from a reporter standpoint, if you didn't save it and the time that you submit it, you're not going to have access to that. We can provide it to you, but it's a good practice to every time you submit, go and download all the forms. So, and it's basically going back to step one, you go to the different section of the tool, make any changes you would like to make. And a couple other features that I guess is not new to the tool. In the beginning, I pointed out that you can download. Let me take one step back. Once you request for amendment, once AQMD staff opens it for you, you get this email. I guess in this case, the reporter, which is Test AER 2014, requested an amendment. So we opened it, and I guess I assigned it to my staff, Carrie Willoughby. You get this email, so you're gonna know who in AER team has been assigned to processing your amendment, so you can contact that person directly. So that's another feature with the tool, that when we open it, you get the confirmation to let you know, tool is open, this person is your contact for this amendment. And going back to the tool, one other feature that we have is, I indicated you can download or actually upload documents, and we do recommend that. Let's say you submitted a source test before the deadline. You got some sort of a confirmation, which I guess that team is working on making that automated. You got that confirmation, print it in PDF, upload it. So in case we run into an audit, we know that as far as the fee purposes are concerned, if your source test wasn't approved or there were some adjustments, we don't charge you surcharges for that. Same thing with the source test reports. If you're using a approved source test report, at least upload the summary page. And it's really simple. You go choose file. It's gonna basically, I'm gonna go to, let's say just pick a random file. And you can describe, let's say, source test. And you indicate from what point of time you want this basic document to show. So what it means that, let's say you do your source test triannually. So whatever source test that I have is gonna be good for 3 years. So you can put the date for 3 years. Let's say I've done it, in 2017. 2017, and so it's good till, let's say, December of this year. December 20th. So when you upload, by giving it those dates, what it's going to do, okay, that's not what I wanted to see, but again, I'm on a different server. I may run into glitches, but let me try. Okay, it doesn't cooperate. What it's going to do is, I told the tool that this document is valid for 3 years, right? If you go to your 2017 report, this document is listed there. If you go to 2018 report, it's going to be there. So by setting up the date accordingly, you don't need to upload the same document 3 different places. You just set the date. And let me go through the list of items I wanted to cover. And I guess that will conclude the demonstration part of the presentation. Now I would like to open it to any questions you have. And we have the room till 12:30. And we're going to have computers if you need, after the question and answer session, if you need hands-on experience with the tool, or you have particular question about your particular facility, we just need your facility ID and PIN. We can log into your account and help you out.
Clicking on? Yeah. How about this? If it's not working, you could go ahead, ask the question.
And we'll repeat the question.
It here on the mic.
Morning. Charlotte with, I didn't catch your last name, but Charlotte with LA County Sanitation District. Present. No problem. Thanks for coming. Regarding the usage of sources for AER purposes? Yes. So a few of your colleagues attended Equate Working Group. So the question is, source lists have been submitted previously, and there are some questions raised about the validity of those. I guess I'll take a quick crack of it, and then I'll have Eugene talk about the Equate Working Group. He's participating in that. I guess in the past, the requirement was, prior to 2019, the requirement was for the source list has to be approved by the district. So if you submit a source list, depending on what it was for, I guess expectation was for the facility to follow a source testing group, making sure the source list that they use was approved. But your concern, I guess, was one of the, reason that, working group is initiated. So I'll let Eugene talk about, Equate.
Sorry, if you can repeat the question again. I was trying to fix the mics, but and it has to do with the Equate Working Group meeting? All right, so just to be clear, for all the workshops we conducted, all the help and support manuals, FAQs, we always notify or put up front that if you were to use a source test, it had to have gone through the review and approval process prior to use. Although you may have used that result and it had been improved or reviewed, it's not guaranteed that, we have a limited staff. We can't run through every single one of these reports. So I think in your case, we did see that recently. We have had discussions, but just for the sake of this workshop, I think this question might be better handled after or on the side. I don't want to kind of give your information for your facilities and the issues or potential issues. As far as the Equate Working Group, we will work through that we are going to plan to have our next working group meeting regarding the default emission factors. We can touch a little bit on the source test results and the approval process. But again, for the sake of this workshop, we'll probably just keep it limited to what the requirements are. I've already went over what the path is going forward as far as source tests. We're going to be allowing those that have been submitted for review and approval to be used in AERs until otherwise notified. Right, so we do have it in our help and support manuals. It kind of goes back all the way to, I think, maybe early 2000s. We say it during the workshop presentations every year. But again, we discussed this. I think you're aware of the conversation, and I think it's probably better handled on the side. And we'll reserve this time here just more for the workshop and for anyone else who has basic questions or general programs or questions about the program.
I guess some clarification about the error message that I ran into because I'm running it on running the tool on a test server. Uploading, I guess, is not available. That's why I had that problem, but you shouldn't have any problem with the actual production site.
Question?
So one of the changes from this year, with regard to last year, is that now once we submit both the report and payment, it pretty much is closed, and any changes we want to make after the submittal, it's got to go through additional steps because the financial department is involved. What if we're, but that to me sounds that it's only, it only works like that if you're paying with credit card. What if you're paying by putting an invoice and writing and sending a check? Would that still close the submittal?
Okay, so the question is, yeah, I don't think the mic is working now, is it? Yeah. The question was, money went over, as far as report submission, once the invoice is generated and you pay, that can't be cleared out if you want to make an amendment. However, if you're paying by check, is the same thing apply? I think the answer is yes, because the invoice is still generated, right? And so you would still have to complete payment prior to moving on to the step where you can actually make the amendment.
Right, so you don't actually have to submit any checks. You just have to let them know.
So I guess my understanding is, I guess we can double check. You know, we can talk after. I'll verify with our IT department. But because it's tied to finance, I assume when you send the physical check, probably it's going to take some time for them to receive it. And once this, it's received, I guess they clear it in the tool. Is that yes?
Right,
so
but usually payroll works in ways that as soon as we submit the report, we're not going to write a check and mail it. It takes about 7 days or whatever. Once the funds are available to the company. So
correct.
That time ago, we realized there was a small little change that needs to be made that might significantly change that for you guys to go back and redo, or still it's got to be through you guys to cancel the invoice. Even though no payment has been made because no payment has been sent. And you guys could go back, we have to call you guys to cancel that invoice and allow us back in.
So I guess someone. So I guess the question is the concern about if you don't submit the payment electronically via e-check or credit card. And some companies, the way they operate takes for them to basically receive the funding so they can cut the check, so they're not going to be able to cut the check right away. So there is some concern about cutting the check and the time that it takes for the physical check to be delivered and cleared by our finance department, so the tool will be available for the amendments. I guess there is, if you look at the surcharges, first of all, if you submit it right now, your initial submit will happen. I think the first surcharge, if I'm not mistaken, I can pull it up here. So I'm glad you brought that up. Let's say when you submit the amendment, the tool is going to ask you to basically put the date. It automatically actually put the actual date. But the key thing is, if I zoom in, it shows you the surcharges. I guess if less than 30 days, it's 5%. But I guess that's a good. You need to strategize even before we provide that online feature. What you had to do, you had to go to the tool, print the summary, send it to our finance. Hopefully someone at the finance, we would get flooded by these emails from the facilities for them to issue the invoice. From their end, send it to you so you can go to the tool and pay it. So basically we're way automated from that. So, but yeah, I guess call us. It's good to strategize, try to be ahead of the game, submit before the deadline, and then through that, period, before the deadline, just we can contact our finance, see if they can expedite the process, so we can open the tool for your amendment before the surcharge applies. But again, how would you handle this prior to this change that we made in the tool? You're still reluctant with that. The other suggestion I have is maybe have the funding available. At least come up with the ballpark of how much you need to pay, and then have that funding available, and just submit it with the e-check option. It's not that different than sending the physical check. What you need is just look at the check, routing number, account number, and the amount, and it's going to basically apply right away.
Sorry, so the late charges.
If you can just hold on, the mics are working now, so.
So the late charges apply from the moment you submit the check, the date
No,
that check.
From March 17, which is the deadline.
Okay, so if
After
I were to submit my application, my report tonight,
You're good.
and I'm gonna pay by check,
Correct.
and I need 7 days to come up with the funds once I have the actual amount, and then I realize that I made a boo-boo and I had to go back and change something.
So once you request for amendment, so in the past, the way the rule is written is from the date of your request. So once you request, that's why we have all these timestamps. So even if I don't get to it right away, we clear it, we sign it to staff as we get them. But basically the clock is frozen. Once you request, the request came in, time is frozen. So even if I process it tomorrow, the time you request it, as far as additional payment and stuff, we use that time. We basically that would be the valid time.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions?
Question about the amendment. So once you submit the amendment, how long it take to get open up once you pay the payments? How soon the tools be available?
As I indicated, we'll be notified. So that's, I guess, one recommendation or request is be descriptive about the change you want to make. Sometimes it may not be that significant. Maybe if you want to change the contact. But again, we have to go. I'll take it back. We have to go through the whole process so everything gets recorded. But submit it. It doesn't hurt to call us. But we get automatic emails. So as soon as we get it, we try to assign it to staff. But I would say at least a day or two. But if you really need to make changes, go ahead, call our hotline as well. So we know about that request coming in. We'll try to handle it ASAP.
So the district doesn't have a prescribed timeline for the staff to respond?
Yeah, but this is just a matter of, as you saw, it's just a matter of clicking a button. We'll try to address that as soon as possible.
Okay. And also, let's say, for instance, like somebody making a big major errors and come with a large amount of fees instead of some small amount. And if that small business doesn't have that money available, how are they going to pay for it?
I guess try to prevent the error. If not, I guess mistakes happen. You can, as far as you indicated, so rigid. We try to prevent mistakes, but mistakes happen. Probably we have to go through a chain of command. So it's going to be aware that it's going to take time. But contact us. We'll try to handle it.
So is this changes done by the district is went to the public process, or it would just like district decided to make that changes, to implement that rigid process to pay the invoice before making an amendment?
I guess they were concerned about reports being changed in the transition. Let's say you submit the report, then we would get like a markup report. We would never get the report ever. And then they had some problems with those. The other thing is we had the online payment not connected to our tool, so you had to rely on our finance department to respond to your request to generate the generate the invoice. Then without the invoice, you couldn't pay. You would pass the you would miss the deadline. So we had a lot of late time. I guess facilities that wait till the last minute we couldn't address that. So this was, again, to address that. That's, I guess, I didn't mean to convey the message that, it's rigid, you have to pay $2 million, you're a body shop, that you just, mistype something. It takes time to fix it up because everything is automated. So, and I'm sure do QA/QC. If you're a small body shop, before pressing the submit button, of course, as I indicated, usually the superiors, managers look at the fees. If you see, significantly high amount of fees, if you couldn't figure it out, give us a call. We help you through the QA/QC process.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Yes, Chris Flake, City of Los Angeles. Looks like you have a good program here. For each of these drop-down menus, you have a list of alternatives. Are all of those drop-down menus included in your help support manual?
I'm not following the question. You mean the type of the categories of the equipment, or?
You have many drop-down menus throughout this tool.
Mm-hmm. So
you also
what
have a help support manual.
Correct.
Are those menus all listed in the manual?
So I guess the menu is basically navigating through the tool. We have copy of the presentation for today's workshop. We try to put a snapshot basically for every single step that I demonstrated. I didn't follow the presentation, but the copy of the presentation you have has all the basically snapshots, all the steps. Plus, if you go to annual emission reporting web page, because what you have is basically for something for you to have to take notes on, but there might be, the slide might be a bit small. If you go to our main web page on AQMD.gov annual emission reporting, there's a link with the PDF that you can see the full slide size, and you can just follow. All the drop downs are provided there. As far as help and support manual, it has some steps as far as getting started, but it's, if you think about it, it's really hard to, you have different configuration, different equipment. It's hard to try to, capture all those. So, and even in the slide presentation, we try to touch on common equipment. Everybody has combustion equipment or spray boots. But that's why we have these workshops and one-on-one sessions afterwards. So if you have a specific configuration, a specific type of equipment, we can help you through the process. But I think we did a detail of a job. If you go to there are two links actually on our web page. One is the workshop presentation, which is the 111 slides that we went through today. Also, there's another document, which is the tool demonstration, which is the slides for the demonstration part. I suggest following that. That gives you all the drop downs, and we try to put all the snapshots, all the windows that you see in those presentation PowerPoints.
Thank you. No problem. That solves the problem of navigating through the tool very nicely. Mm-hmm. I've been through the slides. Mm-hmm. Very nice presentation. Mm-hmm. What I'm asking for is the ability to prepare myself before I go into the tool. So I have all the answers that are going to come up before I go into the tool. So if I have a list of all those drop-down menus, all the alternatives, then I can study what are the alternatives, which is best for me, before I get into the tool.
Okay, we could take a look at our help and support. We're constantly updating it. Mm-hmm. If that's something we could provide, if it's not already in there, we can provide maybe a bulleted list of what's available in the drop-down menu.
That'd be great.
Okay.
John Hamilton, also City of Los Angeles. I can't really read these handouts, the slides that are on here very well, and you may have gone over it, but I was just wondering if there is a summary sheet, and I can't remember from last year. There is a summary sheet before you submit where you can look at all your emission factors and all the total emission rates and everything from your equipment. Is that
Right.
So
I don't
there
think
are
this. Oh, let's go ahead.
So I guess there's a summary tab that I covered. It gives you summary of your criteria pollutants, and then by clicking on each of the links, it shows you which devices are contributing and how much they're contributing to each of the criteria pollutants. And it also breaks it down to permitted and non-permitted. For the toxic, it's most of the fees that are applied, the basic fee, cancer potency weighted emission fee, and ammonios and depleting substances, it's at the facility level. You add up all the emissions and you check if you trigger or not, if you trigger the threshold. For the device, that you need to look at each device and the pollutants. Again, if you click on table 3 per device fees, it gives you, I had 7 devices. If you have 1,000, you're gonna see 1,000 devices listed here, and it tells you by true, it tells you if the fee applies. And if you want to further investigate it, you can click on it. It shows all the toxics reported for that particular device and tell you how much emission you reported for that device, what the threshold was. If you trigger or not. If you trigger, it's going to be true. If not, false. So within the tool, you have all the means you need to basically navigate. Look at the big picture, and if you, I guess, detect the problem, you can kind of go through the layers to get to the source of it.
So you can review it pretty well before you do your
That's why
submission, so.
with all the changes, that was, I guess, thanks to our IT department, we try to, get ahead of you to answer any questions that may come up by giving you all the features and all the additional tables. And it's a, I guess, good reminder that for cancer potency, remember, all the asterisks in the tables, if you put the cursor on it, it opens a little window, explains further what's going on.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, we're just going to take a couple more questions, and we're going to have try to have concise answers for you, so we can have enough time for any of you who wish to come down here and work with our staff to actually go online and use the tool. So maybe another 5 minutes, and we'll go ahead and go with our hands-on working with anyone who wants to come down.
Good, I'll try to make this real quick. My name is Chris Johnson, I'm a consultant. One of my customers has switched consultants, so they had previous information logged from another consultant, so I'm coming on to pick it up where they left off. Is there any issues with, another thing, is the PIN numbers changed every year?
I'm sorry, could you repeat?
Are the PIN numbers changed every year for the access?
Not every year, unless the facility requests.
Mm-hmm.
So my suggestion would be if the facility has some concern about the previous consultant having access, you can email us or you can change the PIN for you. But unless the facility requests, we don't change the PIN.
Okay.
And if you're the new consultant and you want to access the report for that facility, you're going to have to contact the facility representative and make that request for the PIN code if they don't already know it, so they can pass it on to you.
I have the paperwork already submitted from my customer in regards to that. Okay, that answers that question. Some of my facilities are, for their permitted equipment, under 4 tons a year, but all their non-permitted equipment will put them over the 4 tons. It has to be submitted?
Yes, because for the applicability and reporting thresholds, basically permitted, non-permitted needs to be counted.
Okay, so now I have a handful of portable facilities that will be over that threshold then, that do not have submittals into the South Coast.
Contact us, we'll add them to the tool.
Okay.
Because what we, I guess that's a good reminder. As far as the notification, it's the courtesy. We try to, because we don't have monitors, we don't know how the facility operate and how much emission they have. Based on the previous year's reports or potential to emit that we have in our permitting database, we try to basically identify the facilities that will be subject. But the burden is always on the facility that, if they're triggering. And facilities we notify, based on the means we have, we determine that there's a high chance that they trigger. But if you have a facility, if you represent a facility that exceeds the 4 tons, do let us know. We'll add them to the reporting tool and open the submittal for them.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
I just noticed that this new reporting tool looks an awful lot like what I used with the ARB to do the the carbon reporting.
Correct. MRR.
And the other point is that as long, you can do a lot of stuff to it, as long as you don't submit it,
Correct.
And I think it's the same thing here.
Correct.
Before you submit, you gotta make sure everything is absolutely right.
Correct.
Because it's a pain with the ARB to get anything changed either,
And,
after you do that.
Of course, I'm gonna, being a lead verifier, working with that program for a while, and working for AQMD, our tool is better. But I guess the similarities, that's a good catch. The similarities are somewhat due to the requirements as far as the online submittal, how what the requirements are. But one thing, per my knowledge, I don't think if you're subject to verification under MRR, so you have an auditor coming auditing you, I don't think their tool has validation. Let's say once you put everything, it may give you error messages here and there, but looking at the report as a whole and giving you warnings, I don't think they have that. It does now. And I guess I didn't. Yeah, I guess it's usually on the spot, but it doesn't. Ours has the on the spot, and also has the validation. Even if you significantly, I guess, about the rigidity, some concern was brought up. Even if you're reporting significant numbers for certain pollutants, it actually gives you a warning. Hey, you're reporting too high of this, toxic compound. Hey, that's why it's worthy to go through even those validation messages that are not prevent you from submitting, but going through those, because that may point out some of the mistakes that you didn't catch.
Just to being careful with future possible inspections, when you print out your final document after submitting your report, will that copy that you can download and print for your records will it contain all of this explicit information breakdowns?
Yes.
That includes.
I guess the PDF report tries to touch on the most of the big picture items. It does a good job as capturing all your criteria, pollutants, emission factors, but for the toxic, if we were to include it, because for one piece of equipment you may report, depending on maximum, if you're not subject to AB 2588, you may report for one particular device, you may report 66 toxic pollutants plus all your criteria. So it was hard to fit it and make it, I guess, not readable, but easy to follow on PDF. That's why we added that Excel report for just particular toxic. So not only you can have all of them next to the same device, you can search and you can filter. So those three reports are what you need: the PDF, the Excel of the whole report, and the Excel of toxics.
So I'm guessing that just in order to be okay with a future possible inspection, the PDF copy would be more than enough, because any data that I've submitted will be in your database anyway.
They may ask you a question about the toxics. They can always contact us. One other thing that you need to keep in mind is, as long as you have a valid username and you know your PIN, you can always, before the inspection, even if they ask a question about the record, you can just log into your account, that particular year, and just provide them the information.
Thank you.
And that's another reason for you to upload the information, because if the inspector reviews it, asks you, hey, where'd you get this from? You can just go to the upload option, and then all the records are there. Like, here you go. This is what I used.
Okay, this will be the last question.
And our facility falls under AB 2588. So when you import the data from the AER And this is imported from 4 years ago for the AB 2588.
I guess depending on, okay, let me go about this. For AB 2588, you have a long list, total of 177, let's say 180 of toxic pollutants. But between those 4 years, every 3 years, you report, let's say, starting this year, we count for 66 species, let's say 66 toxic. 66 out of the 180 is reported every year. What the tool does for that 66 goes and looks at previous year. Anything that we refer to or is specific to the long list, it goes to 4 years ago and grabs it from there. So any emission factor you have 4 years ago that are not among the toxic species that you report every year is gonna be taken from the 4 years ago, with the exception of diesel particulate that used to be only AB 2588 pollutant. Now it's among the 66. So you have to report it every year.
Okay, so only diesels are all reported
Yeah.
ET, but the other previous data should import.
Yes, if you're subject to reporting, if your facility is subject to reporting this year, basically they're phase 1A. So 66 pollutant is gonna be from their 2017 report. The remainder out of the 180 minus 66 is gonna come from 4 years ago.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Okay, so again, we're going to be opening the floor down up here, so you can come up here, talk about our staff. If you still have questions, you can still continue to ask them. But as far as the webcast, this concludes the first workshop for Annual Emissions Reporting 2020. Thank you for attending.
Thank you.